What's going on, FPL managers? Welcome to a new video from Fantasy Football Scout. It's game week 11 time, although game week 10 isn't even over yet, so we've still got one more game to play. Everton Wolves tonight. Rob, I think you're all out, mate. So 6-2-1 is your total score at the moment, and we'll get onto your team in a minute. But how are you?
Personally, okay. Fantasy football wise, a little bit shaken, I would say. I've already made 3 transfers for a -4, but I do have reasons for that.
3 transfers already?
Yeah. I had 2 free transfers and I've taken a hit. But we'll explain that when we get to transfers. And I don't think there's anyone who could guess what I've done. Like, if I told you the 3 players I've got in my side and which ones have gone and who have brought, I don't think there's many people that would get all 3.
I mean, were your transfers out of frustration? Because it's been a bit of a weird game week, hasn't it? A lot of difficult results to stomach.
All right, yeah, okay. So I mentioned last week in the comments that I was like red flag for this game week because my wife is like literally about to burst. Like the baby is just like any day, any minute now. So I thought I'd make the transfers now because at any moment it could happen. And I thought I'd do it whilst I'm in the right frame of mind, because I didn't want, rush into labor, be completely exhausted and deal with all the new baby stuff and I've missed the deadline and everything's messed up. So I thought I'd do it now. I'd have to do it early, right frame of mind. And I think the decisions I've made just would have been the same, would have been better if I'd have just done it if I were sleep deprived. Like if I'd have just been up for like 40 hours straight and then just whipped up my phone on the app looking for Wi-Fi in a hospital or something and just this transfer, go to sleep. And if you look at my transfers, this is what you'll think has happened.
I have seen your transfers, and that is genuinely what I thought was happened. But I reckon you can multitask, FPL in one hand, changing nappies in the other. I think that's very doable. So, I
have reasons as to why, though. We'll talk about that later.
Brilliant stuff.
I go for it. It's all or nothing.
Well, I mean, congratulations on the baby, by the way. I mean, it hasn't happened yet, but almost. But yes, you're going to take a break from these sorts of videos in the next few weeks, very understandably. So I just want to thank you for being on so far this season. It's been great having you, but we'll get you back on as soon as the baby stuff gets a little bit quieter, if that's even possible. But let's move on and talk about how you got on in game week 10. We've got 43 points, and I've sort of nicely included the auto sub points here because Livermento's coming in for Mason Mount. So talk us through it.
So if you don't put Livermento in my team, I have more points on my bench, or the same amount of points on my bench as my entire 11.
Oh no.
So,
Gallagher,
you know what?
13 points, right?
I regret nothing. I honestly don't. 99 times out of 100, it just wouldn't have happened that way. So I know, I think you mentioned it as well on Saturday, the deadline stream. And in FPL General said something like, stick with your goalkeeper no matter what. Don't go for Foster. Stick with your set and forget. And it looks right in hindsight, but I still massively disagree with that because Foster was at home to Southampton. Guaita was going to Manchester City.
Yeah.
Defending champions, one of the best attacking teams in the Premier League statistically, and we know what Manchester City are. Tell me you don't bench Gallagher against Manchester City.
No, I think
you don't bench Guaita against Manchester City.
I think you made the right moves, mate, to be honest. I think it was just, as I said, it's a week for weird results. I mean, no one in their right mind would have predicted Palace to beat City.
2-0. Gallagher goal and assist.
Exactly. I mean, when you look at, Southampton beat Watford 1-0, and it was a Shea Adams basically wonder goal, wasn't it?
Lovely goal. Yeah.
Lovely goal, but low XG. And, I think a lot of people would have made the decision to play Foster because Southampton are massively underperforming side in terms of going forwards. They're solid at the back, of course. And that's exactly how the game went. Adam Armstrong had millions of shots, but they're all over the bar, miles off target, etc., etc. That's what you expect from that Southampton side. And it was only a wonder goal from Shea Adams that beat Foster. So I think...
Yeah.
That move, that decision to play Foster was absolutely fine. It's just absolutely typical that, Ramsdale owners such as myself and Guaita owners or whoever got punished in that way. It is what it is.
And Livramento was my first sub because, again, Gallagher away to Manchester City. And we'll talk a little bit about Gallagher later because it all boils down to Milivojevic for Palace and if he plays or not. But
Murdered that name. Murdered it.
I thought that was right, Milivojevic.
Kind of.
How do you say it?
Milivojevic.
Oh, sorry, I didn't do Milivojevic. I still didn't say it right. Let's just call him Milo. It all matters whether or not he plays. But any player like that in the midfield three, away to Man City, obviously I'm gutted to not get 13 points, but I'm honestly not kicking myself that much about it because I look at my starting 11 and before the game week, who would you have put in this starting 11 Gallagher over?
No, I mean, exactly. As I said, I think you made the right moves. I think a lot of people really... This is why the title of this video is, benching blunders, because I think there's a lot of people who have loads of points on their bench, and that's completely understandable. But I think the bottom line is, for all of us, if you made the right decision on paper to begin with, you can't really beat yourself up, whatever the result is. Which is fine.
I always say the same thing. Like, I still think I made the right call. Double City at home, defense to Crystal Palace, bench the City ones. And I also double down on things like that. If I play an attacking player against my defenders, it feels as though I'm kind of halving my odds. I just double down on it. So I went for the City defense over the Palace attack.
But I mean, double Man City defender owners have been unlucky recently, haven't they?
Since we've wildcarded them in game week 7 or game week 8, they've done nothing. They've just come. I think it's something I saw. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's something like Cancelo and Diaz combined in the last few game weeks. It was like 50 points for the first half of the season and like 10 points in the second half. Whereas James and Chilwell and Chelsea defense has just absolutely blown them out of the water.
There's definitely talk about James and Chilwell double ups. There's a lot of credence in that move potentially. But yes, it's just been unlucky. I think Man City have been just leaking that goal every single game, which is just... it is what it is. It is a pain, but you have to deal with it. What's your fan? Do you want to keep the double Man City defense going forwards, or is it? Are you going to look to move away from it?
No, I had thought about it, but my original plan for anyone who's watched me with you for this season has always been to put money into my defense. So having like double City, Liverpool, and Chelsea is something that I've pushed since like the start of the season. And it just unlucky, I think, with the likes of Diaz. I went for the safer bet of like the centre backs because I had Rudiger as well. So I went for the more safety rather than the Reece James or the Ben Chilwell. Because, I mean, you look into it as well, like James and Chilwell haven't been around all season, right? Alonso started the season and Azpilicueta was a wing back for the first half, whereas Diaz and Rudiger and Cancelo have been your season-long players. So I went with that kind of stability at the back because I even said, if I just had a solid back four, I can spend all my time and energy focusing above, my midfielders and my strikers to change those around. And it just so happens that Man City have not been able to keep a clean sheet in the last few game weeks. Just poor concentration or sloppiness or a lack of an edge.
Yeah.
To say, I think, because, I mean, they drew, even when you go back to game week 5, when they drew at home Southampton 0-0, and Diaz and Cancelo obviously got points for that. But yeah, I think it's one of those that they've got United next that if you're going to move, people might think it's sideways, but if you've got nothing else to do, I wait for the Champions League games. But I don't know why you wouldn't go from Diaz to James or Diaz to Chilwell or like one of the two if you've got two City.
It seems like a sensible move, doesn't it?
From game week 14, it's easier for Man City. But again, Chelsea is so good defensively Like, even though
They
they
are.
weren't in that bottom corner where City were on your defensive charts that you've shown in the past, it was just clear that Chelsea are just so solid against any team that even though that the City have got a good defensive on paper run from like game week 14 to game week 18, 19, 20, I still think the attacking explosiveness of those Chelsea fullbacks outweighs that. And
Completely agree. Yeah.
0.3 million.
I think it's Chelsea's structure, isn't it? They play 5 at the back. City only play 4. So when they get counter-attacked, Chelsea have got that extra man to cover. And it does also mean that their fullbacks, Chelsea's fullbacks, are more attacking and they almost play as strikers during...
Yeah, they're the wingers. They're the wing play. Yeah, whereas for City, then they're not, because you've got like Grealish on the side or Sterling on the side, or
Cancelo's been a really frustrating own, hasn't he? Because I mean, he does this every season. He comes up with the great stats. XGI is always good for defenders, etc. But it's always shots. It's always speculative efforts. There will be a game where he gets a double, maybe even 20+ point haul, but you just can't predict it, and he's a frustrating own, especially when City are leaking goals. So it's one of those things, like, you have to keep him if you've got other fires to fight. But I wouldn't be adverse to swapping him to the likes of Chilwell or James if you don't own one of them. So with that in mind, let's move over to talk about how I got on. I'm on 56 points at the moment with Jimenez to play. I've got the same lucky auto sub coming in with Mason Mount ill for the game. So Livramento comes in for 6 points extra. Nice green arrow again, heading in the right direction. Hopefully Jimenez can add to that. But fell foul, exactly the same as you, Rob. Benched Ramsdale for his 10-point haul, which is absolutely typical. But as we said, I can't beat myself up because I think Foster was probably on paper the right decision. Leicester could have easily scored in that game. It's just I did Match of the Day challenge on Saturday, and just completely I managed to stay away from all of the results, and I watched it, and obviously I was absolutely ecstatic with that Reece James haul. I couldn't believe it. But you know, when Match of the Day, they come up with a narrative and you can sort of guess what's going to happen even before it does.
Every time.
Loads of focus was on Ramsdale in that game, and I was going, oh no, he's going to have an absolute blinder.
He's going to do a howler or
I mean, I would be happy if he did a howler because he's obviously benched, but I was going, no. And soon at the end of that game, I was like, please, Backman, can you play for Watford instead of Foster so I could get him auto subbed in? Anyway, terrible 10 points bench, but it's not as bad as some other people. And obviously I'm getting lucky with the Livramento 6 points on. My transfer decisions, other than Reece James, which I did last week, which was a great transfer, of course. But previously, I brought in, De Bruyne, who's been terrible. I mean, there's some serious doubts about his fitness. And he got hauled off even before the 60th minute, I think it was, at the weekend. And I think I saw an article, I think you might have tagged me in it, actually, Rob, saying that he might miss the Man United derby just because the positions are very competitive. He's struggling maintaining that fitness, and I'm very worried. Having 11.9 million invested in him, I think there's better premium options. But in this video, we are going to go through quite a lot of the attacking options, split into 3 sections. We're going to look at midfielders under 9 million. We're going to look at forwards under 9 million, and we're going to look at premium options altogether. Do a deep dive stats for you just to see who are the best players to own, and it definitely is applicable to my team because I want to get rid of De Bruyne as soon as possible, barring any other fires to fight. So it's what it is. Hopefully Jimenez can do the bits for me later on. What do you make of my team, Rob? Not fishing for compliments or anything, but is there any holes that you think that need to be fixed?
No, you've already said it. De Bruyne, and I'd be looking at Rafinha and Antonio. But De Bruyne is spot on. I mean, you've brought him in and he's got you 2 points in 2 games, which obviously, and for that much money.
Yeah.
I mean, he can turn it on a dime, you know what I mean? In a split second, he's going to do a 50-yard wonder ball straight through to someone or strike it from 40 yards back of the net, top bins. That's what he can do. But you can't be waiting for that to happen. You need to see something to sort of spark you up for that. But just want to point out, like, last week I was with you, me and you both very happy with Mount. And we both looked and we thought, wow, Salah, captain, and Mount saved our game week, gave us a green arrow. And I'm just looking at the team and I'm just thinking, for you, it's James. You know, I didn't have like a hero for me. Like if you take out that 21 pointer and it's you. I mean, you can't play the ifs game. You've got him and you've rightly taken his 21 points. I just think people are maybe going to back too much on James and Chilwell, thinking he's going to do that every week. But I mean, that's a monster haul. 21 points is ridiculous.
Unbelievable.
It's crazy that, like, I think that's...
But you have nailed it. Like, it was one of those game weeks where if you didn't have 3 players that absolutely destroyed it, then it was a really average game week for you. And that's just complete luck. I mean, James, Ronaldo, and who else was it? Probably Ramsdale, if he played him. I mean, Rafinha obviously did well. I mean, Salah captain wasn't exactly, mind-blowing with 5 points. So...
Yeah, the average this week I think is 37, but you look at the current top scorers and he's the only one in 20. I mean, you've got the current kings of the game weeks. You've got Ramsdale, Gabriel with 15, James with 21, Lowton with 14. You're not going to like how I'm going to say this. Omar Bomadele, the Norwich defender for 10 points. Rice, 13.
He scored at the weekend, Omar Bomadele.
He did, good header. But these are players that we don't have, right? Yeah. Henderson, Jorginho, Rice. It's been a tough game week, and you're right. If you didn't have 1 or 2 players that got, I mean, in my entire team, I've got 1 clean sheet, 1 goal, and 1 assist. My front line was 2-2-2. Antonio, Kane, and Tony.
Yeah, absolute nightmare. Is it me, or is Mason Mount like the most high maintenance player to own? He even just turns up for a 20-point haul, just have the snivels.
That'll do me. That'll do me for a few weeks.
I've owned him for most of the season. He's either be injured, subbed on for 0 points, or 30-point haul or whatever. It's so annoying. Anyway, I'm going to keep him anyway, I think, for the short term. But yeah, he's annoying. So we're talking about Mason Mount. Let's use that as a segue to move on to midfielders under 9 million. We're going to do a deep dive on those guys. So we've got some stats on the screen. This is going to be the consistent chart we use for the rest of the video, just to make sure that everything is easily comparable. But we've got shots up the top, chances created towards the right, so creative players towards the right, threatening players towards the top. And this is just midfielders under 9 million. We've got Rafinha up there, top right, which is where you want to see him. Very, very good for quantity. Good at, being involved in the game. Lots of chances created, lots of shots, but not so good at the clear-cut opportunities, which is probably to be expected when you watch the game. He tends to shoot from pretty far out. You can see the big chances and the big chances created are the numbers inside the bubbles. And you want those to be as big as possible because that shows that he's got a good proportion of easy efforts. I don't think that's a massive issue for Rafinha because he's technically very strong and he can finish a long-range effort, as we saw at the weekend. I mean, it wasn't really long-range, it was in the box, but he had plenty of defenders to get through. But yeah, I mean, this is going to be what we're going to focus on. We're going to have a look at their fixtures. We're going to create a shortlist and have a look at the fixtures in a minute for certain players. But a few players stand out on here, Rob. And I know you wanted to talk about Jared Bowen, who's decent. A decent 3.5 shots per game, 1.7 chances created per game. That's very decent. And decent for the big chances, 0.7 big chance per game. So what do you think about Bowen? It's annoying that West Ham have some tough fixtures ahead, right?
Yeah, just, when we look at the stats and I tend to adjust mine to look at the, funnily enough, you've done the same. This is for the last 6 game weeks. And that's what I've been looking at as well, because now we're going into game week 11. It takes a few game weeks to sort of settle down, in my opinion. And I want to look at recent form. So I usually look at the last 6 game weeks as well. And when I'm looking at stats and looking at certain things, and I'll ask you about specific stats later on. And he just kept popping up. Like, he's someone I've had in the past before. 6.3 million. I agree. You're probably not looking to specifically bring him in with Liverpool next and then City in game week 13. But I was just genuinely impressed. So game week 10 is, so he's got 11 points, 3 points, 6, 7, 5, 5. He's just on a good run. And when you look at his expected goal involvement over the last 6 game weeks, he's third in the Premier League. So Salah is in space. Antonio is 3.68. And then Bowen is there in 3.62. So he's actually just behind Antonio. And, I like to play sometimes the money game and think, okay, he's going to give me value for the same team, which will come onto my transfers later. Same team, but I'm saving quite a substantial amount of money that if people are not necessarily looking into Antonio, then Bowen, I think, has been doing really well. He's also second for shots in the box. Again, Salah is first. Bowen is joint second with Cristiano Ronaldo, and then Antonio is after them. So when you're looking just purely at stats, shots on target as well, Bowen is joint second. Again, behind Salah. Let's just assume Salah is top of every single attacking chart, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Bowen, for expected goal involvement, shots inside the box, shots on target, is second or third.
Very decent. Regardless, though, it's nice that he's doing well. It just comes at the wrong time. If he had really decent fixtures, I think even people would be turning their nose up at him just because he doesn't have that importance in FPL size that we don't go, oh, we need to bring Jarrod Bowen in now. He could be a punt, even if he had good fixtures. But the fact he's got bad fixtures, I'm not sure people will be flocking to him. But maybe as a really differential who's in good form, maybe worth taking the risk. I don't know. Let's just
1.4% owned, and people are saying, so West Ham's got a pretty difficult run of fixtures to like game week 15 now. And people are considering, should I hold Antonio just for the rough and just go with it? But if people were looking to say, keep Antonio and double up on West Ham again in the future, or if you sat there with Ben Rama and you still believe West Ham are a great team to back, I wouldn't necessarily back against a Bowen move just because he's popping up everywhere. He looks lively and he's played 90 minutes every game since game week 5.
Lively is definitely a key word we have to focus on here because
he's getting the returns. He's not just lively. He is
exactly. Yeah, but I was going to use that as a segue to talk about players who aren't necessarily getting the returns, like a Mr. Harvey Barnes, who's just above him in. He's been a horrible, frustrating own this season. I think we've both owned him at the start of the season. Hasn't really performed in terms of the conversion, but I think he's only recently back from injury, isn't he? And he's been playing on and off. And this is a per appearance stats, so maybe it's a little bit misleading. We have to think about how much he's converted as well. And the likes of Ben Rama has been falling down the goal scoring ranks as well. We've got Tielemans who's on the right there, and that's quite impressive. Obviously, his 0.7 big chances created per appearance is very good, and he's been scoring some long range efforts. Clearly a decent striker of the ball, but again, not really someone that we're going to focus on bringing in. There's more appealing assets on paper like Smith Rowe and Mbuemo or Gallagher, your own man. So I'm just not sure these stats really convince us to go for those sorts of players over and above the people that we perceive to be great options. And we've got Trossard there as well. Scored at the weekend against Liverpool, which is great. It was a great goal. But you can see those numbers in the middle. 0 for big chances. 0 for big chances created. You don't want a player that has 0 amount of easy efforts. I know Rafinha's of that ilk, but we know that Rafinha is a superior striker of the ball. I'm not saying that Trossard isn't, but maybe Leeds put more emphasis on Rafinha getting forward, and maybe he's scored more goals this season than Trossard. So Trossard just doesn't seem like a glamorous pick to me. And so this is what we're going to do. We're going to condense all of these players into a short list, and we'll touch on some of the people we've missed out as well. But just focusing on Jota, Foden and Mount there, that little trio, it strikes me as a bit odd that they're not a bit further up. But then again, they do tend to get rotated here and there. I know Foden's played a series of games, which is obviously great, and that's why a lot of people are flocking to him. We'll compare their XGI in a minute. But yeah, there's always downsides, and I know Rafinha's a cheaper option, but he's much more busy than those 3 guys, which is quite surprising, I think. And Burmo's got his good fixtures coming up. And Gallagher, we know what his talent is. But the problem with Gallagher is that his XGI is pretty low. So he's scoring some really decent goals. And we just wonder whether that's sustainable or not. I'm not sure.
All because of Milivojevic.
Oh, my God. Goodness me. Oh, one player we haven't talked about is Cornet at Burnley. And I know you wanted to talk about him, Rob. And he's definitely lively, let's just say that. And he's been scoring. What do you think about him? Could he be a punt?
Just about Cornet, I just wanted to quickly touch, just because we didn't jump too far ahead, when you talked about Barnes and Tielemans.
Sure.
Just for Barnes, like, he's dropped now. He came on at halftime, but he's not really featured since game week 7. Trust me, I know, because I had him for like those 7 very painful game weeks. But in terms of Tielemans, I actually want to ask your opinion about what do you... I personally, you do look for some assists from a midfielder, but I do want goals from a midfielder because that gets you more points. Now, Tielemans is second for chances created and he's first for big chances created. Even if you take his wonder goals out, he's also top for expected assists. So right now he's kind of like leading the charts in terms of, and you can see on your graph here, he's on the far right. So he is creating these great chances for his team. His price is pretty good. The fixtures aren't great yet. They've got Leeds, which I think is a good fixture, depending which Leicester turn up. Then they've got Chelsea. But after that, Watford, Southampton, Villa, Newcastle. Is Tielemans not someone you'd look? He's 6.5 million. He's 8.2% owned. Is he not someone you'd look at purely because you don't think he's got that goal potential, even though he's got that fantastic assist potential? Let's say they go nuts and they play Vardy, Iniacho, Daka up front. You know, he's got these 3 lads he can ping the ball to. I know he scored 2 goals in game week 8 and game week 9, 1 goal each. Would you not have him because he doesn't have that goal threat as well? Is that something you look for in a midfielder? It's something I personally do, but I was wondering if you...
It's a really interesting question, isn't it? Because I think that's something that we think about subconsciously when we put these players like Tielemans out of our mind, out of contention for our FPL teams. Because I think there's an element of psychology that if you have a player that is in control of his own fate, i.e., it's just up to him to shoot and for him to score, that's the FPL return. Whereas if you've got an assister or a potential assister, he needs to feed that ball well into another player in his team and rely on him to score a goal. It's like that, an additional layer to get FPL points.
Yep.
And there's a lot of people that fall foul. There's like Mason Mount last season was great for chances created, but Chelsea really struggled with conversion, which means that he did all this great stuff, but he never got FPL points. So obviously I'm not saying that Tielemans is like that, and maybe Vardy and Maddison or whoever maybe a little bit more reliable in the conversion aspect. But I wonder maybe that's just the psychology of us as FPL managers, whether we deviate away from those sorts of players because of that lack of trust in that double layer of barriers of getting in that FPL returns. I don't know. What do you think about that sort of psychology?
Because that's, for me, when I look at a midfielder, like, we get the wingers, but we get the forward wingers, like your Mo Salahs, right? They're not really midfielders. They are like the attackers of their team, right? But Yuri Tielemans is a center midfielder. Like, he is a guy who is further back, who is trying to get assists. So just for me, we get the likes of Salah and Son because they're the guys who are basically up front. So yeah, for me, I think that's it. We do discount players like Tielemans because I know he scored. Like I said, I know he scored 2 goals.
Yeah, long range effort. So, and that's it.
Crazy, beautiful, world-class strikes, but you can't rely on that. Like, he's making all these chances for his team. But yeah, I think for me, if I'm getting a midfielder, I look at one who, unless the price is like Gallagher's 5.6, right? But he has been getting those returns. But yeah, I was curious if you didn't go for players, even though they're so good in terms of an assist, which is what you'd like from a midfielder. If you would count them out because they don't particularly have that forward positioning or attacking threat.
I think it's better obviously if they have both that threat and that creativity. Obviously, that's double damage, so that's obviously double string to the bow. I can't get my head around picking Tielemans for my team. It's just that barrier I can't get over it. So he's not on our shortlist, surprisingly. We'll move to that now. We've got fixtures alongside. So we've got Mason Mount at the top there with 1.21 XGI per 90, which is massively skewed by that Norwich game, by the way, because his minutes have been pretty sparse. Let's just say that in the other games. This is just midfielders under 9 million, as it says. Then we've got Diogo Jota at 0.8, and that's seriously good. Again, he plays 30 minutes here and there, doesn't start every game, so those XGI per 90 is definitely going to be inflated as well. We've got Jarrod Bowen next at 0.59, Phil Foden at 0.56, which is surprising it's not higher from my perspective. Brian Mbeumo 0.56 and Rafinha at 0.51. Just wanted to touch on the players that aren't on this list in terms of Smith Rowe, who we quite like, is 0.26 XGI, but he's like a lively player that you assume that his stats are going to be better. Perfectly capable of getting like a double-digit haul in any game, but the stats don't necessarily represent that. And Gallagher is even worse, 0.16 per 90, which is crazy. But our perception of him, he's brilliant. So I don't know what to think about it. But we've got 6 players here, which
just before you get that, just about Smith Rowe, he was one of the biggest overperformers again this week. He had one shot, 0.08 XG. If you look at his touch map, it's not attacking really in the slightest. His last 4 game weeks, his XGI is 0.81, and he's over. So you're the guy that likes to look at the overperformers and the underperformers as teams and players. And I think it says he's overperforming by 2.1 delta. So it's one of them where it's kind of eye test versus the stats. Again, I'm just not pulled in by Arsenal assets. I had a choice between Gallagher and Smith Rowe, but I've been in the same situation because I would have benched Smith Rowe and I would have benched Gallagher and getting similar points, because that was my decision on a wildcard. I compared, they were my last piece of the puzzle, and they're both pretty much getting similar kind of points. But for me, I'm just still not sold by Arsenal. I think again, it came to that Leicester. I've said they've been poor for pretty much all the season. And if you saw that Leicester, or you were doing the match of the day challenge, but Leicester were fast asleep. They were so bad. They were genuinely, probably, arguably the worst I've seen them play this season, and they've been bad this season. So again,
it made Arsenal look good, did it?
They did. And I'm not even, it feels like sometimes I'm anti-Arsenal. I'm not. I've got no ill feelings toward Arsenal whatsoever. The stats aren't really there for me. Yeah, he's picking up some points. I'm just not sold on
Arsenal. An interesting club, aren't they? Because I think we could use that same reasoning to say, why don't we go Aubameyang over some other premium options? And maybe we can use that argument to say, well, we'd maybe go Gallagher ahead of Smith Rowe or Mbeumo instead of Smith Rowe or whoever, because maybe that Arsenal attacking performances aren't as consistent as other teams, and I think that's probably a fair comment, because they're going to be a little bit more erratic. Maybe one game they're going to be great and score 3 or 4 goals, another game they could be subpar and lose 1-0, which is why Saka and Smith Rowe might be difficult options to own. I owned Saka a few game weeks ago for a 4-week game week period, and that was pretty average, I'd have to say. You could get away with owning Smith Rowe because of the price. I think you could use him as a 4th or 5th mid. But if I was going to choose Gallagher over, I would choose Gallagher over Smith Rowe right now. I think eye test. Yeah,
I don't know why. I thought you'd be the opposite.
No, eye test is definitely more encouraging. Palace are on the up, and Gallagher's the centre of everything. Loves to bomb forward, and I mean Palace. They've got loads of players coming back. They've got this Elise guy, Eze's. On the verge of coming back into the game. They even rotate Benteke, who's been pretty decent. With Edouard's coming in, it's a really fun side to be playing in, and Gallagher's going to get a lot of chances, I think. So
I always forget he's on loan from Chelsea.
So many Chelsea.
He's not their player. He's on loan, isn't he? He's actually a Chelsea player. So
Broha, Livramento, Gallagher, all these young Chelsea players doing well. Incredible stuff. Incredible future for Chelsea. even though it's not exactly an old side that Chelsea currently have. So I don't know what they're going to do with them. But anyway, let's get to our list of six. I own Mason Mount, and we both own Mason Mount. We've got Burnley at home next, so I don't think he's going anywhere. I think the illness he currently has is just a short-term thing, apparently non-COVID related. So hopefully he'll be back for Burnley at the weekend. I mean, there was even talk that he might be back midweek for the Champions League match, but I imagine that Tuchel just won't bother playing him, considering he wouldn't have trained in the last couple of days. Hopefully that keeps him fresh for Burnley at home. I think it's a decent fixture, but then it's followed by Leicester and Man United, which they're hit and miss games at the moment, aren't they? Leicester turns up, Man United could turn up, and then Watford away. So I'm not in a rush to get rid of Mason Mount, but he's been a frustrating own, and I think maybe there seems to be better options out there in the likes of Foden for me, even though he's got a worse XG per 90. I think playing centre forward for Man City just seems on paper to be a better risk. What do you think?
And from game week 14, when the City fixtures become, I mean, City don't really have that many different. Well, they shouldn't have difficult fixtures, but that run from 14 to 20 is, if you're looking to get rid of Mount, keep him for a couple, and that's maybe the time to think about it.
Yeah, the problem is, the reason why we're focusing on these midfielders, we'll look at forwards under 9 million a minute, and we'll look at premiums in general, is I think we're pretty scarce for other alternatives, which is why I think quite a lot of our teams are merging. We're going to start having the same teams if you're following the template. So we're just going to look at maybe some possibilities, some alternatives. Are we missing anyone? I mean, Diogo Jota was an interesting one because he plays here and there. He obviously missed the game at the weekend, but when he does play, his XGI is so good. His XGI per 90, I should say. So, I mean, I saw Mark's wildcard team at the weekend when he revealed that. He's got Jota. He's stuck with him. I think he's an okay own, to be honest, because if you've got a strongish bench that can cover it, why not go Jota?
We both haven't owned Jota this season, and I don't think I will. Now, if the African Cup of Nations is still on, I'll probably bring him in because it'll be fantastic value at 7.5 million. But I just disagree with the notion of spending 7.5 million on a player that is not in their best 11. And you say that missing a game. Now, when you're talking about like a centre back, they're less likely to come on, right? But you give your forwards, if it doesn't matter if they're losing, they'll throw him on as an extra striker to get a goal. And if they're winning, they'll take off Salah or Firmino or Mane and give him a rest and give Jota a run out, right? So, I mean, he came on for 12 minutes against Brighton to get that extra goal. So I disagree with the idea that if he doesn't play, I still think he'll come on. And people say, 20, 30 minutes, that's enough. But I don't think it is. I don't want to spend 7.5 million on a player that plays 12 minutes.
Yeah, it's a good point. And I think he probably gets rotated slightly more than maybe the City boys in terms of Foden or whoever. I mean, I think probably Foden plays 4 and 5, and I think Jota plays maybe 2 and 3, maybe 1 and 2 even. And I think it's a tricky one because I think as soon as you see Mane getting rotated for Jota, you think, here we go, now going to get Jota in because it could be any one of those front three, maybe barring Salah that comes off. So I think Jota's in there, of course, but I think just my personal opinion, Liverpool play better with Firmino. And then obviously Mane and Salah, but it's a really interesting one because I wonder why neither of us has owned Jota. Surely there are better options out there, but I kind of want to own him at the same time because what we were talking about on Saturday with Mark, that Salah's so well owned, he's going to be captained. Alexander-Arnold will always be well owned, even though he's had a little bit of a subdued ownership recently. That will come back up. So you're watching a Liverpool game and you go, well, I feel like I don't really have any skin in the game here. I want like someone else in this game that can add that differential element to it. And I guess that's why Mark has gone Jota. But I mean, there's always an option to go Mane as well. And we'll talk about that a bit later because I'm going to look getting rid of De Bruyne, 11.9. So I don't know. There's an option just go sideways to Mane.
Just have both, yeah. Like because we talked about like permanently captaining like Salah and spreading the money around to make a good 11. But I tell you, I've not done that, and I probably should have. But just just plain and simple, just don't like that idea.
That's absolutely fine.
Money for 12 minutes of football.
Yeah, that's absolutely fair play. I mean, I think if people want to take the gamble on him, there's nothing wrong with that. And alternatively, like we are sort of ignoring him, you're not going to get massively punished because you are going to get those benchings, I think. So let's move on from Jota. I think it's just personal preference.
Just about that, I did a quick bit of maths, and I think it was right. So he's played, and you'll have to double check that for me. He's played 602 minutes of football. Divided so by 90, that's 6.68 games I think he's played in 10. So when you say he plays like 2 of every 3, it's actually like 6 to 6.5 in 10.
Okay, interesting.
So it's, again, if it was 2 in 3, I think you're on there. I think that's not too bad. But
well, I mean that's close to 2 in 3. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
6.67 is the point he'd have to get to be 2 in 3, right?
Almost. 2 in 3 sounds better though than 6 in 10.
Yeah, a little bit. We're not going to argue about maths here, though, Rob. Come on.
He's done 66 games in 100. That sounds bad.
Oh my god.
Don't you think though?
I guess so.
6 out of 100 is 2 in 3, but it still sounds really bad because he's missed 44 games.
Let's not get hung up over maths here. Let's move on.
Count to 100, Ted.
Hush. Right, let's. We're not going to talk about Bowen because we talked about him earlier. He's got Liverpool, Man City in the next 3. I'm not sure any people are going to really move for him. And I think the biggest dilemma is whether to keep or sell Antonio. But we'll get to that in a minute. Foden's the interesting one for me, and we've got Mbeumo's there. Norwich at home, Newcastle away for Mbeumo. I'm tempted to bring him in, because those are some juicy fixtures for Brentford. But then again, they did have a subpar sort of performance at the weekend, and I don't know whether they were missing Mbeumo and that they just rejuvenate when he comes back in the side. But I mean, it sort of puts me off. Like if they sort of morph back into their championship form for the next 2 fixtures, they get a result maybe, but it's not emphatic. And then I'm stuck with 2 Brentford players, and I'm like, maybe just keeping Tony and just playing him for these 2 is probably enough. I don't know. I haven't made my mind up on that yet. But back to Foden, I think he's great. I think he's a great option. I really do, and I kind of resent not owning him because he should have got a return at the weekend. I know it was offside, marginally offside, but I think Foden owners probably count themselves a bit unlucky, right, Rob?
I'll just touch on Brentford. I did actually mention, was it last week or the game before, about now Brentford have got good fixtures. Like, it seems like when they're the underdogs in a game, they do really well. But when they're supposed to be the favourites and they've got to take the game by the scruff of the neck, it maybe they'll be found a little bit wanting. And I said that I wouldn't double up on them. I've got Tony, and I think I even said that I think Mbeumo is the better option if I had to choose 1 or 2 if he's fit, because he's cheaper and he's a midfielder who plays the most attacking. But I've got some more binary code for you. Do you remember
binary code?
Yeah,
binary code. Oh my god!
It's been a long day. Do you remember when I read out all the stats about the Chelsea centre forward position?
Oh no!
The same gentleman, Andrew Gower, posted Tony's goals from open play.
Oh, I see. I think I did see this. Yeah.
All right, I'll just say it's 12 goals in 38.
It's not bad.
There's a whole but calendar year. That's calendar year. Right.
This is open play, right?
Open play across all competitions, calendar year. So remember, the first half of the year is in the championship.
Yeah,
so when it's 0-0-0, 2-1, 2-1, 0-1-1, that's before. So when you look at the back end of the championship season and this Premier League season, it's not good.
Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, obviously he's on penalties, which bolsters those numbers as well, and he's obviously an excellent penalty taker. But I mean, those when we're talking about the season as a whole, that's 38 games. I wouldn't be surprised if he scores 12 goals in total over this 38-game season. And the fixtures, the easier fixtures, such as Norwich and Newcastle, are going to be those opportunities where he bolsters his goal-scoring numbers. It's just, he's been very, very creative, and he's been feeding Mbeumo, but there's no reason why he can't get on the score sheet as well. He's had a number of disallowed goals in the last couple of games. He's a great striker with the ball. He's been adapting his game well. I think Tony's a great option. I think he's probably a better option than Mbeumo if you're going to have to pick one, in my opinion. Especially Mbeumo's probably missed a week of training potentially, and might not be as match fit as Tony, but I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if doubling up on Brentford players wouldn't be the worst thing to do anyway. It's just that aftermath. Do I really want another Brentford player to get rid of?
You just want him for these 2 games. That's it. That's all I've wanted Tony for. He's done basically nothing. He's done nothing since an assist in game week 6 in that Liverpool thriller.
Yeah.
Just 2s across the board. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Why do I want 2 players that do nothing?
It's a little harsh, but I mean, these are the 2 best fixtures of the year, I'd say. So
that's why I've got. I'll just have half of the risk on that one. I think.
Okay, well, that's fair enough. I wouldn't begrudge anyone who wants to double up on Brentford for these 2 fixtures.
No, definitely not.
Let's talk about Foden, because I did briefly touch on him. Yeah. What's your opinion on him? Is he a priority transfer for anyone, like objectively?
No, not for me. But this is different. Remember, we talked about this last week. For 8.2 million, now he has played 90 minutes in the last 4 games, which is great. If he can, I've been so surprised that Cancelo, apart from coming off after 77 minutes this week against Palace, Cancelo has played every minute of football, the most of all of the players, because even Edison went off to Brazil, right? So the fact that Foden is getting these 90 minutes would definitely encourage me, but I still feel as though at any moment he could just be dropped for 5 games. And I've said a bunch of times before, if you're the kind of guy or girl who can deal with an 8.2 million player getting benched or coming on for 18 minutes or something like that, then I think he's a great option. If you've got the squad structure and the patience and the calmness to deal with that. But if it's just a situation where it's going to tear your hair out, because he's not played the last 3 games, and he's, let's say, plays Champions League, he doesn't play the weekend, he plays the cup after that, and you're getting angry and frustrated, he's not for you. But
that's fair
enough. But I said to the same thing, because do you remember? Didn't you do the poll? Was it the poll that you started last week? Who'll get more points, Antonio or Foden? In the next 5, and I got absolutely slaughtered on the polls. Well, it's 2 points apiece at the minute with 4 games to go.
Long way to go, though. I think
it is a long way. He's great if you can deal with a bit. I even said if you can promise me he plays 2 in 3, which I believe is 66.67%.
Oh, great shout, Rob.
2 in 3. Or 66 in 100 games, then I'd probably get him.
Yeah, I'm personally.
No,
I'm personally. It really depends. If I go sideways move to Mane, then it sort of blocks me. But any other move, I'll be gearing up to get Foden in, especially from game week 14 potentially, because the fixtures start getting good. But I mean, the competition for that centre forward spot, and he's proving that he can keep up with the energy required, the fitness required to play in that role. 90 minutes every single game. I think he will get rested in the Champions League / Cup games here and there. So I think he'll be a Premier League player for most of the time, which sort of makes me pretty excited to own him. I think he's a better option than De Bruyne. Let's just say that. I mean, I own De Bruyne. I don't want him anymore.
I agree with this one. Yeah.
I think Foden's a good option. But yeah, let's finish off talk about these midfielders under 9 million with Rafinha. He's at the bottom here. Leicester at home next, Tottenham away, Brighton away, Crystal Palace at home. It's not a bad set of fixtures. I think if you own Rafinha, you should not be in a rush to get rid of him. He's a great talent, and if he can stay fit, then this subpar Leeds side without Bamford, without Ayling, I don't think is too much of a disadvantage just to keep owning him. You might have a different opinion, Rob.
Yeah, I'm the opposite. Yeah. Now, people have been suggesting about Leicester being weak down their left side, like the weakest for chances conceded. And obviously, that's where Rafinha plays on the right because he cuts in, right? But that's not enough for me to warrant him in my starting 11, for example, because Leicester, Spurs, Brighton shouldn't be easy games for Leeds. And for me, Rafinha is a fantastic player, but he has to pass the ball. Like, he scored. People are like, what a ball from Dan James for the assist. But it's like, yeah, all right. Dan James passed it to him, and then he had to skin 4 players and slot it, go around the goalkeeper and slot it in. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And again, you look at the goals that Rafinha scored. He's scoring it from range. He's scoring it from near the, like. Do you remember the Newcastle goal where he whipped it all the way around?
Oh,
and
yes.
I called it stun-esque, right? When he whipped it all the way around, it went in. We're relying on his individual brilliance, which is fine for 6.6 million. And 18.2% ownership is also attractive. It's not mega owned. You don't have him, you have him. It's not too punishing, and it's quite rewarding if he gets it for you. But I mean, they've just got out the relegation zone. He has to pass the ball to other people or do something incredible. Plus, isn't he going to have another international break with Brazil coming up that could possibly miss another game? So yeah, I think with the fixtures coming up, Leicester, Spurs, Brighton aren't the best. And I just don't trust Leeds. I don't trust Leeds as a team. And I can't keep relying on him. He's got no double-digit hauls. Granted, he got 9 points, but he's still not got double-digit hauls, which you don't expect necessarily for 6.6 million. And he is such a wonderful player that if Bamford's back and we start to see that kind of link up again, then yeah, that's great. But again, I keep coming back to it. I keep relying on this individual moment of magic from him, and I can't rely on that to be what he gets for me all the time.
That's
like we were talking about Tielemans
earlier
about his world-class goals, right? Like, I can't rely on Tielemans to score a 30-yard screamer, and I can't rely on Rafinha to skin 4 players and slot it in. And again, I'm not trying to be harsh, but it was Norwich.
It was Norwich.
Can he go and skin all those players? And he's pretty injury prone, if I'm honest. He gets kicked a lot because he's a flair player. But, he's got international duty, he gets injury, he gets little like niggles here and there in his legs or his hamstrings or his knees or whatever.
The international thing,
value, I just don't.
Yeah, that's completely fair enough. The international thing, I'd sort of forgotten about it, and it was frustrating that I've owned him since the start of the season. I have to put up with the international stuff. But yeah, there's a good chance that he misses that Tottenham game after Gameweek 11. That's something that maybe would sway me to sell. But I mean, I think I slightly disagree with comparing him to Tielemans, because Tielemans doesn't play as advanced. I think when you're talking about those winger positions, he tends to play in that sort of winger position and cut inside. He's always going to play advanced. He's going to play way more advanced than Tielemans. So that's the slight difference, I'd say. And Leeds' reliance on Rafinha scoring is going to be huge, and that bearing is enough to make him an attractive own. I know what you're saying is Leeds, they're going to struggle a little bit more than usual, playing maybe tougher opposition, but I don't think Leicester or Spurs are, that consistent to maybe warrant that they're going to walk over Leeds. So I'm sort of happy to own, but the international stuff does sort of put me off a little bit. I have to think about that.
His stats as well, like XG non-penalty is 1.01, and he's well down on the list. So,
is this over what period?
6 game weeks, last 6 game weeks.
That's what we said when we looked at the chart earlier. We saw a huge number of shots and chances created, but a really low number of big chances and big chances created, and that's it subdues the XG, and that's what we look at. We look at the volume of chances and volume of shots that he's having, which is amazing. He's the best out of this price bracket. but it's the XG that you have to compromise on, and his ability to overperform on that XG is definitely there. So I don't think we should worry too much about it. I definitely see where you're coming from, though. So I think we've dwelled too much on midfielders under 9 million. Let's move on to forwards under 9 million. And this sort of surprised me. Back to the chart, by the way. We've got Antonio there, top right, and I thought his stats were sliding, but clearly, compared to his peers, he's still far and away the best forward under 9 million out there. And I think this is what I put something on Twitter yesterday saying, are we tired of owning Antonio with his sort of hazy, subpar performances? He's sort of been lost in the game, popping up on the channels out of frustration. He didn't get a single return and 4 goals yesterday. I was really, really frustrated by that. But seemingly, his stats are still fairly decent. And the consensus was that, I mean, it's not a priority transfer out. Who else is there to bring in? And it's a good point. Who else is there in this forward line to bring in? And who would be a better option than Antonio in this difficult run of fixtures? So we've got this this chart to compare maybe some of the viable alternatives. I mean, I own Antonio, I've got Tony, I've got Jimenez, who seem to be fairly decent for the big chances. Jimenez is slightly worse for number of shots per appearance. He seems to be slightly on the more creative side, which is fair enough, considering he's been assisting Hwang a few times in recent weeks. Hwang himself is at the bottom left of this chart, but he's still seemingly good for the big chances. Been very clinical recently. So who sticks out on this that you would maybe look at as an alternative to Antonio, or maybe just a supplementary forward?
Yeah, it's with Antonio as well. Liverpool, Wolves, City, Brighton, Chelsea in the next 5. So when I mentioned earlier about like the Bowen thing or holding on to Antonio, I think that's fine. But I think even when the stats are still good over the last 6 game weeks, but if you are watching West Ham, he was the assister twice in that game, right? He was the I think it's called a hockey assist, right? I think they have that in hockey fantasy games. But again, he gets into some positions. He tries to smash it and he skies it at times. But I never felt when I was watching it that I was going to get a goal from him. And you said it looked a little bit. Is he tired, even though he's not really playing the European games? With a difficult 5 coming up, and he's got such a high ownership. It's one of them where if you want to protect rank, then fine, keep hold and do stuff elsewhere. But you know, I'm the kind of manager that just wants to attack, and I'll go for it. So who sticks out for me? I've actually sang his praises since, was it game week 2 or 3 when I thought, wow. And if you can afford it, just Gabriel Jesus has just massively, as a footballer, when he said, I want to play on the wing, he has genuinely been impressive. And he did have, you said about Foden creating the chances. It was Jesus that finished it really, really well. But like you said, it was a touch offside. But when he's played, it feels like I'll get a goal or an assist out of him.
He seems more lively at the moment, doesn't he? Playing in that favoured position, favoured position.
Yeah. And he's keeping them out of the team. If you go on to the other ones, I think a popular move, if you didn't have Tony already, could be Antonio to Tony with Norwich and Newcastle next. I don't think that's crazy. People always worry about, you'll have to pay a bit of extra money to get Antonio back. But, you know, do you want points or do you want money in the bank? For me, I think, you know, I'd rather go for points. And the Wolves boys, decent run of fixtures. They seem to be linking up well, Jimenez and Hwang. And, you know, Everton, Palace, West Ham's not easy, and then Norwich and Burnley. So,
yeah, completely agree.
I would be looking towards Jesus if I was feeling a little bit spicy. Tony, if I didn't have him, just because he's got Norwich and Newcastle coming up next. And then I'd probably be looking towards the 2 Wolves lads because they've been linking up well, decent fixtures. And just one more that sticks out just a little bit. And I never get him, and I don't like the team he plays for, but he always gets points when he's fit. And it's Callum Wilson.
I knew you were going to say Callum Wilson. Knew it.
It's ridiculous. Like he just, even on like video games, so I play like Football Manager games all the time. and I've done the new Football Manager 22 with Newcastle because he had like 200 million to spend. And I still play him, and he's still overpowered on that. And he's just like that in fantasy football. Like when he's fit, he plays for, like, this is going to sound really horrible for Newcastle, but he plays for Newcastle. And when he plays, he just gets points. Do you see the goal he scored against Crystal Palace? Like,
oh, I mean the overhead kick. Yeah, it was fantastic.
It's insane. And then the week before, he gets a goal against Spurs. But then his biggest problem is his injury record. Like, you look at what he's played, right? 6 points, 1 point, 9 points. Doesn't play for 2, 3, 4 games. 8 points, 5 points, 2 points. So he's only blanked 2 games that he's played. And he's played 6.
Yeah, crazy stuff. I mean,
when he actually is on the pit, and he's 1.6% owned, he's 7.3 million. He's just one of them where, like, when he's fit, I don't know how he does it. Like, do you know what?
I'm not adverse to owning Wilson. Like, his fixtures are fairly decent. We'll come to, because we've got fixtures up on the next slide, the forwards under 9 million with fixtures. But I mean, another players to think about here, maybe I'm not going to. Josh King is here. Obviously, he's got 1 big chance per game, 0.8 big chance created. But I mean, a lot of this is coming from that Everton game where he scored a hat trick. So take with that with a pinch of salt. He obviously didn't get anything at the weekend against Southampton, so monitor that. If he can sustainably keep up that decent performance that he displayed against Everton, then maybe he's someone we looked at. But yeah, I'd steer clear at the moment. Benteke is an interesting one. 0.75 xG per 90, which is more than Antonio. Let's just say that. The problem is that even though he got 2 goals in a row before game week 10. He seems to be rotated a little bit in this Palace side, and there's a lot of competition. So even though he seems to be in decent form, it's just not something that I can substantiate in owning him. Watkins is the other one. He scored at the weekend, 0.4 xGI per 90. Danny Ings is, I'm not sure if he's injured or whether he's just out of the team. I think he might have COVID. I don't know.
Muscle injury, I think.
Muscle injury, okay.
Muscle injury.
I mean, Watkins, his stats are improving, and obviously he got his goal. 0. Whatever it is, big chances, decent. I think 0.7. Can't quite see that.
He hit the, it's 0.7. He hit the bar as well, right? Wasn't it a really, really good save? I thought he hit the bar as well against West Ham. Really great save from Fabianski. So he could have got 2 goals.
Yeah.
We talked about him before. Yeah, he looks pretty lively. 7.3 million, but
I've got our shortlist up now. Forwards under 9 million, and we've got Antonio, Tony, Watkins, Jimenez, Jesus, and Callum Wilson there. I haven't put Hwang up because I think we could just throw him into the Jimenez bracket. But Hwang's XGI per 90 is 0.31 compared to Jimenez's 0.35. So Jimenez is a little bit down on the XGI, and that's fairly intuitive. I think he tends to have a lot of chances created, and that may not actually translate into the big opportunities. But I mean, he's clearly a talent. I'm very happy owning him, and he's got some good fixtures: Crystal Palace away, West Ham at home, Norwich away, Burnley at home. Especially those latter 2 fixtures are incredibly appealing. So I would be looking, if I wasn't a Wolves striker owner, either Hwang or Jimenez, to think about it from maybe game week 13 when they play Norwich, because Wolves are not a bad side, and they can definitely get something from those games. Antonio, we've got at the top there with Liverpool, Man City in the next 3. Wolves and Brighton aren't exactly easy fixtures. So
yeah, defensively, yeah, pretty good.
So this is why we were talking about getting rid of Antonio. But I mean, you could bench him if you really wanted to in the Liverpool and the Man City games, or you could just play him. I mean, that type of game might suit West Ham. That counter-attacking play might suit Antonio. You never know. But if you've got Livramento sitting on your bench and you want to play him instead, then I don't think that's a unreasonable thing to do. Tony there next with 0.53 XGI. Norwich and Newcastle. We've talked about Mboma already this stream, but the same applies to Tony. So further on, Watkins 0.4, Southampton, Brighton and Palace up next. That's not a bad set of fixtures, right, Rob? I mean, are you tempted by Watkins at all?
We've talked a bit about Villa before. I just feel like they've looked since, I think, the United game, they've lost them all, right? They've lost the last 4, and they got smashed by West Ham. I mean, the red card obviously changed it, but I think West Ham were clearly the better side. Arsenal should have been more than 3-1. I think Arsenal embarrassed them. I think they embarrassed themselves. I think Villa was awful in that game. And then they let slip that lead against Wolves and lost 3-2. If you're looking for an attacker, it's fine. It doesn't matter if your team concedes, right? You want the guy who scores the goals. It doesn't matter if they lose 4-1, you just want the guy who scored the one. But just Villa are on a little bit of a slide recently. And Southampton are improving. Brighton are solid. I mean, are they still like top 6? I haven't checked the Premier League table today, but Brighton are doing really well. And Palace are on the rise as well. I think we're looking, and then obviously Manchester City. I just think it feels like, again, going back to like Rafinha and his team and Watkins and that team, it feels Villa as a team are on the decline. And I don't think I want to invest in players where I don't see the uptick yet.
That's completely fine. And I think when you think about the fixtures in isolation, you're talking about Brighton. Yes, they're good. They've had a really good start to the season. I think they were in the top 4 at one point, and then Palace are on the up as well. I think you don't know whether you're going to get a really decent performance. Obviously, Brighton turned up at Liverpool, but then they could get slaughtered away to Arsenal, for example, or they could lose to Chelsea, or they could, I don't know. It's that inconsistency. Obviously, they've got a good possession side. They've got a number of good players. Sometimes when they shoot, they're all off target. That's the thing. It's the underperformance. It's that reliability that maybe keeps that fixture difficulty fairly low compared to the likes of, I don't know, Man United or Everton. I'm not talking about consistency in Man United. That's a terrible, terrible comparison to make. But I think you know what I'm saying.
If you go to, if I had to ask you now, and it's a pretty easy question, 3 best offensive teams are which 3 teams in the league?
I mean, Chelsea probably. Chelsea, Liverpool.
City, Liverpool. Obvious, right?
Yeah.
The next 3 are Southampton, Wolves, Brighton, and that's Watkins' fixtures.
That's fair enough.
Chances conceded, shots on target conceded, goal attempts in the box, things like that. You're looking at, that's goal attempts. City, Liverpool, Chelsea, the top 3, and then Southampton, Wolves, and Brighton after that.
That surprises me that Palace are up there in terms of defensive capabilities. I would have thought that they would have suffered a little bit in terms of that attacking prowess creates holes at their back. But obviously they just kept a clean sheet against City, so fairly decent. But yeah, it's a good stat to throw out there, which probably does reduce Aston Villa's appeal, and hence Ollie Watkins. But I think he's still a good shout if you wanted to take the punt. We've talked about Jimenez already, and Gabriel Jesus. Yeah, it's a really interesting one. I know Gianni's been touting Jesus. I don't think he's a bad punt at all, considering his reliability of starts in that right wing position. Callum Wilson's the one that intrigues me a little bit. I know it's Newcastle, but I mean, those are some decent fixtures, and I think they actually go on longer. I think he's got Burnley after Norwich in Gameweek 14, so I wouldn't be surprised if Callum Wilson gets a run of form going. He's already got a goal against Aston Villa, he said. I know it was Palace, sorry. And Brighton, Brentford, Arsenal and Norwich in the next 4. That's not a bad run, right? Does he interest you at all?
And then Burnley and Leicester.
Yeah.
It's just, like I said, like 6 games, he only blanks twice and he's 7.3 million and he plays for Newcastle is incredible. But there's been 10 game weeks.
Yeah.
Not 6. I can't have a player that plays 6 in 10 games. I don't want to go back into stats again, but I believe it's something like 60%.
Oh my God.
I have a player that plays 60% of a season. But do you remember when we were first picking out players to start the season with? And I told you, I said something like, in the last 15 games, how many has Wilson played? And I told you it was like 5. Because that's it. This isn't just a new season thing. This is a historical thing throughout his career where he's clearly got ability. He's clearly a clinical goal scorer, lots of talent if he can stay fit. And he's still not found that rhythm. Like, he's got 2 90 minutes under his belt, which is lovely, but give it 1 or 2 game weeks and something's gonna pull again.
It's a very easy thing to say, and I think prudent managers will definitely agree with you. But I mean, you could say the same thing about Antonio. He's starting to get this run fixture. He looks really good again. And Danny Ings is injury prone, of course, but when he gets a run of fixtures, or on a good fixtures, and he can stay fit, then he's still a decent option. Just by saying, oh yeah, he's injury prone, means that you can't get on board with the good fixtures. I mean, it's a perfectly reasonable argument, but some people might miss out by saying, yeah, I'm not going to get on Callum Wilson because he's injury prone, but he's got a good run of fixtures. When he gets injured, just transfer him out. I guess that's a contrasting strategy.
He plays for Newcastle as well. I think.
That is a.
I just want to throw in my Matt Ritchie stats for the day.
Oh no!
On the ICT index, he's third. He's second for creativity of all defenders. He's top for crosses in the last 6 game weeks of all positions: defenders, midfielders, and forwards. And he has the most successful success rate of crosses.
How many attacking returns does he have this season?
Oh yeah, just future. Actually, I've typed here. Lesson to learn is that you have to combine certain stats or have some eye test to make a good decision. When we find certain stats that look good, we need to combine them with the correct stats. So when earlier I said I was going to ask you a question, so it's all well and good about things like successful crosses and creativity and stuff. But we've been looking at forwards and we've been looking at midfielders. Are there any key stats that you'd like to suggest that you love to look at or combine together? So you can make any player, and I've done this before. Like you can make any player look like a superstar. Like I can make Matt Ritchie look like he's third for creativity behind Mo Salah, and it sounds really good, right? Like Gross or Pascal Grosch weeks ago, and I was joking saying, he's top of the successful passing and crossing charts, whatever it was. What would you combine? So we're looking to find different midfielders and different forwards. Are there any sort of key things you like to look at that stick out in your mind?
I mean, whenever I produce my charts, I always like to split out the big and the small chances, because that gives me... It paints a picture on how that player plays without having to watch them. Whether they shoot from far out, whether they just hang by the goal, whether they get these proportionately much easier or much more difficult chances. And splitting also the creativity and the threat out, which is why some of the charts I do are have big attempts, which are the big shots and big chances created. And then the small attempts, the small shots and the small chances created. That for me gives me a combined view on how good... or how different each player is. You're going to see that correspond to the XGI furthest to the top right. We're always going to see that. But I think understanding how a player plays is also incredibly important to seeing how much they are going to be projected to score. You could equally do it with like shots in the box. You could equally do it with your passes in the final third, touches in the box, this sort of stuff. They all do the same thing. It's just how you interpret those numbers and paint a picture in your head about how that certain stat might capitalize against future opponents and how those opponents play. You could go into it in complete depth if you really wanted to, and I'm sure a lot of us actually do. That's how we gain an edge against our opponents. But it's not just, XGI. It's not just this person has the highest XGI, he must be the best. It's more to it than that. If it was like that, Rafinha wouldn't be regarded as one of the best players in the league, and I think he is just technically an outstanding player. But there's always people that get shoved down the list because they don't conform to that particular stat. It's just getting a well-rounded picture in our head, and I think that is the main secret to success in FPL, basically. So enough about forwards. Let's move on to the main topic, I think, which is premium options. And I think we're struggling at the moment to really come up with who's the best premium option outside of Salah. We've got the chart up here. Mo Salah up there top. Miles, as you say, space, Rob, with 4.7 shots per appearance. Next best is Cristiano Ronaldo at 3.5. And we've also got Bruno Fernandes there on the right-hand side, who's Miles best for chances created. Which is very interesting, and he might be the pick when Man United's fixtures get a little bit easier. But then we've got this little pack of players behind them, with the likes of Son leading the creativity, ironically, and Rashford there as well, and Vardy. We'll have our shortlist in a minute, but who's your pick other than Salah? If you could wildcard now and pick a premium option outside of Salah, who would it be?
Like, I can ignore money and stuff.
No money, just pick.
I love the idea of a Salah Mane double up.
Yeah,
I'm very convinced. I'm a big Son fan. Do you know as well? Just looking at your charts, like, do you just think that the Fernandes? So you're right. When I talked to you about Tielemans, right, on that far right side, it's like Bruno's the same, but even more. Like, you can argue he's got more goal threat, but in terms of stats, it's not actually really there at the minute for Bruno, I think, compared.
Yeah.
Like, he's getting the assists, but it feels like he's like he's dropping down, or he's not the goal threat. But if you force me to choose another premium, I love the idea of and I've not done this, by the way. This is not my transfer, but I was so close to that. And was it last week I mentioned it, or it could have been on another stream where I said, like, the idea of a Salah Mane double up just. Last week, you showed the chart about attacking teams, and Liverpool were way up in the top right corner by themselves. Like, and their numbers as a team and expected goals and all of the good juicy stats that you want from a goal scoring attacking side, Liverpool were streets ahead of everyone else. And if you took price out of it, I mean, if Mane was 10.5 million, I think we'd all have him. Why wouldn't we?
Potentially. I mean, it surprised me that he was sort of a bit down in this chart in terms of the number of shots and number of chances created, but that's not the be-all and end-all. He's still 0.8 big chances per match, which is next best, equal with Vardy. No, it's not. I lied to you. Son is next best, but he's third best after Son for big chances. So he's clearly getting obviously the decent efforts. When we watch Mane, he's such an attacking, such an attacking threat. He always has that ball to Salah, and they've been linking up better than they usually do. And when Salah's going to get these goals, if we think that Salah's going to get more goals than he usually does, then Mane's probably going to benefit of that with FPL points in terms of maybe assist potential. So I'm definitely not adverse to doubling up with Mane. It's one of my thoughts this week, maybe a De Bruyne to a Mane move.
And you could do a straight swap, can't you?
I could do a straight swap. It's 11.9 to 11.9. And De Bruyne has been obviously a bad transfer, but even though he's fairly decent for chances created on this, 0.7 big chances created per match as well, his XGI is way down compared to a lot of these players. It's actually 0.35 XGI per 90. I mean, just compare that to 1.04 for Salah, 0.64 for Mane. I mean, he's doubly worse than Mane in terms of XGI per 90, which sort of doesn't surprise me. And that's being uplifted because he's been playing limited minutes. So, I mean, De Bruyne has just been a bad transfer, and I can't wait to get rid of him, to be honest. I think it will be either Son or Mane that I'll be looking at, because Tottenham, I think Nuno's confirmed that he's been sacked now. So they potentially get some new manager bounce in time for their decent fixtures from game week 12. I mean, Everton this weekend is... It's not a bad fixture either. So I'd be tempted to go with Son, but De Bruyne is definitely out for me. Lukaku's been nowhere. Obviously, he's been injured, of course, but even before that, he's been blanking. One player I want to talk to you about is Rashford, and he's been back. He's been scoring as well. 0.62 XGI per 90, which is very, very decent. It's like second or third best in this list. What do you think of Rashford? Is he someone that you can invest in? I think he's a midfielder at 9.4, something like that.
Yeah, 9.4. I mean, he's not got 90 minutes under his belt yet. He's one to keep an eye on when they hit that game week 15 to 22 run. So keep your eye on him for the next 4 game weeks and see if he can get into that 11. Because, I mean, Ronaldo's down the middle and Bruno's behind him as the attacking midfielder, right? But now when you start talking about the wingers, you still got like Sancho to think about. You still got Rashford. You still got Greenwood. I mean, it's good to see him pain free. I mean, he looks sharp. I mean, he's come off the bench, but against Leicester and Spurs and got a goal. But you can also argue that in that situation, counter-attacking football for Manchester United is fine for Rashford to do that. Not yet. I would look at Rashford until they hit that run and see if in the next 4 game weeks, now he's starting to get more minutes, he's looking fit, he's looking hungry, then we can assess then. I would definitely not be going near him until like game week 15.
That's
But just interestingly, if you just did a straight swap, a good thing, Son's fantastic, like he's like my favorite. But if you are thinking of just doing a Kevin De Bruyne to Mane swap now, you could do a almost straight swap. You probably keep a little bit of change in your pocket. If game week 15, you went from Mane to Bruno Fernandes.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess you could also have that option of going for Rashford if you wanted to save some cash as well. Obviously, a move from a premium midfielders to a premium forward takes 2 transfers, so that's not completely ideal. But I think the only real option that I could be tempted to go back to Ronaldo instead, but maybe with a couple of other Man United assets also doing well, maybe the other alternatives aren't bad. So maybe that sort of makes me think I don't need to go to a premium forward again, especially with Lukaku not really being amongst it. But yeah, the Mane move definitely does tempt me. Otherwise, it would be for Son, and that allows me to upgrade either Rafinha or Mount to the likes of Grealish, or maybe even a Rashford, depending if I took out Mason Mount, maybe I could go up to a Rashford. So that would be fairly decent, bolstering the midfield. So definitely something to deliberate on. But I mean, the consensus is that Salah is obviously incredible for shots. Fernandes is great for chances created, but hasn't been really been amongst the FPL points too much. And I guess that goes hand in hand with Man United's erratic form as well. Vardy he had a really good purple patch, and now he's got back-to-back 1-pointers. I know he only played half the game, not this weekend, the previous weekend, and he blanked obviously against Arsenal. Woeful Leicester, you called them. Is Vardy ever anyone you would entertain?
Well, I had the choice when Lukaku got injured, I had the choice of Vardy and Kane. And I said at the time, Vardy was the better choice because he was on a hot streak. But that's what I find with Jamie Vardy. He'll have 10 games where he'll score every single one and then not score for 10 games. And yeah, it was a 50-50 call, and I went for Kane. With the back of my mind, potentially going from Kane to Ronaldo when United get that fixtures. And again, keeping my eye on how United do over the next 4. So no, I wouldn't go to Vardy. And again, it's bringing back the idea of that team issue. Now, the good thing about Vardy is Leicester have had, for most of the season, been poor, not good enough to their standards, but he's still been getting goals. So I'm never going to say Jamie Vardy is not a very great option, because year in, year out, the guy scores like minimum 15 to 25 goals a season. So, I mean, he's already got 7 now in 10. I wouldn't back against him where he's got Leeds this week. Chelsea, very difficult, but he loves playing the big boys. Like, he scored, isn't like Manchester United as well, one of his most teams that he scores against the most. Like, he's good against big teams. But then he's got Watford, Southampton, Villa, Newcastle. So the run for Vardy coming up there, if you want to get Vardy now, and I don't want to say suffer that Chelsea game, but not expect much in that Chelsea game, you can have Vardy now, and then when we get to that game week 15 or 16 or whatever, consider a United player or use the money elsewhere. I'm never going to back against Vardy. He's done it year in, year out. And apart from, unfortunately for people who Lukaku got injured, let's all get Jamie Vardy, he's got back-to-back 1s. But that doesn't put me off Jamie Vardy, because he's a fantastic historical goal scorer, one of the all-time Premier League top goal scorers.
He's got it in him to have a run of form whenever, and it doesn't.
Whenever he feels like it.
Exactly, it doesn't even need to be the good fixtures, as you've sort of alluded to. It can be up against the decent sides, Chelsea and Man United or whoever. So yeah, we've got fixtures up for our shortlist of premium players. I haven't included Salah on this because everyone sort of owns him already. His XGI per 90, by the way, is 1.04 compared to a lot of the other people on this list. The next best is Sadio Mane at 0.64. So that just shows the gulf in that XGI per 90. But Sadio Mane, Liverpool's fixtures, West Ham away, Arsenal at home, Southampton at home, and Everton away is not bad at all. And it does make me want to go Sadio Mane. That extra skin in the game whenever I want to watch that Liverpool match. I know that I'm going to get even more of a green arrow if they do well. And as you said earlier, Rob, they've been far and away the best attacking team, over and above Man City even, in recent weeks. So there's nothing wrong with that move, I don't think. It's just probably the value that Mane gives compared to Salah is considerably less. But then again, I currently have De Bruyne sitting in my team at 11 million and he scored 1 point over the last 2 games. So it's a bit of you're caught between a rock and a hard place, really, choosing between premiums who don't necessarily offer that value, but you need to sort of put that spot in your side to maybe maintain flexibility in order to jump on a certain premium that might have a good fixture run or has been in a good run of form. So Ronaldo's there on the next bit, 0.6. Man City next and Chelsea in game week 13 sort of puts me off bringing any sort of Man United player in until I think it's game week 15, game week 16. They have a good run of fixtures. So that will be, I think, when we start looking for Man United players. The same goes for Bruno down there at 0.53. We talked about Vardy already. Let's talk about the Spurs boys, because they're going to be a bit of a talking point in coming weeks, aren't they, Rob? I mean, we've got Son here at 0.54 XG per 90, which is really decent. But then Harry Kane, 0.36. And we've seen a little bit of a sluggish Harry Kane in recent weeks. Do you think that he comes back to form with a new manager?
It's tough to say because let's say it depends if it is going to be Conte. It depends on the manager. But I think it's I don't want to sound too like philosophical, but I think it's actually Harry Kane within himself. That's the problem, not necessarily the manager. So I said this earlier, but I do feel sorry for Nuno Santos, because Spurs never wanted him. They were looking for a manager for months, and he was like their 10th choice manager. It was just felt like he was doomed to fail. Like even at Wolves, they said he doesn't play attacking, attractive football. He was going to find it really difficult to get the Spurs fans on side, and Harry Kane made it almost explicitly clear that he wanted to go to Manchester City because of a gentleman's agreement. That's not happened. I can't imagine Manchester City paying 150 million for him now, and so I don't think it matters what manager comes in. I think I've said before, I went from Lukaku to Kane because he is in terrible form. I think he's having a really poor season. I said he was at fault for the Antonio goal when they lost 1-0 against West Ham. Spurs as an entire team and the whole tactics of Spurs were terrible against Manchester United. But I just think it comes down to Kane. So I don't know if it's going to be a new manager or a new tactic necessarily, but Kane has always got that world-class ability. You said earlier about Ronaldo. I know he's got City and Chelsea in the next 4 and Arsenal in the next 4. But I would also back Ronaldo against any team because he's got that world-class potential ability. And I think Kane, I'm not saying Kane is as good as Ronaldo, but Kane has that potential to just be like one game week, be like, all right, I'm up for it now.
Yeah, I would be surprised.
I've stopped. I've had my sulk. I've had my paddy. I've had my moan. I'm ready. Maybe a new manager will bring that. Maybe if they do get a winner in like Conte, who's going to come in and say, this is the plan. I want to turn you guys into champions. That might inspire him. I never saw Nuno as the manager to be big enough for Spurs. You look at, I always see them as a top team, and I would have thought that they would have pulled in like a top manager. And I think Antonio Conte is that. Maybe that will open his eyes and think, oh, maybe Spurs are not a team on the decline, and he's only going to go there. He refused them originally because, rumor has it that Daniel Levy wouldn't promise him the funds. So something must have changed. There must be something there that he said to say, okay, you've got free reign, because he wouldn't go otherwise, would he? I mean, he's a very well thought of manager. Maybe that's the one, but I do think it comes down to Harry Kane within himself. At any given moment, a player, all of these premiums on the list that you've put here on the shortlist, every single one of them has that potential to just turn it on. And that's why they're premium players. And that's why they've got such a high price. It's just that Harry Kane, probably on this list out of all those players, could be the best forward in the world, but is currently, of those players on the list, the most out of form or out of sync, or just something's not quite right there.
Yeah,
could still be the
that.
hangover from the summer. He's still maybe even tired from that. Could be that he never got his Man City move and he's still unhappy with the club. But yeah,
let's talk about his fixtures, because Spurs have a really good run now. I mean, Everton away isn't a bad fixture, but then they get even better. Leeds at home, Burnley away, Brentford at home, and then Norwich at home, Brighton away, Leicester away. That's a really good run of fixtures up to game week 17. And I think Harry Kane could possibly use that to get back into form. I don't think it's a bad option to preempt bringing him in. Maybe if you're a bit more prudent, you wait to see him getting a couple of goals on the score sheet, and then maybe bringing him in for game week 12, game week 13, something like that. I don't think it's a bad option if you've got a premium forward that's sitting there making a hole. But I think, you probably want Ronaldo from maybe game week 16 onwards. So maybe worth getting on Harry Kane now and creating a spot for Ronaldo from game week 16 potentially. So I don't think it's a bad option. Having this chat, I feel like I kind of want to get Son in for this good run of form, and then I've got some money in the bank to maybe upgrade some other players. Let's finish off by looking at your team for game week 11 and digesting these crazy moves that you've made.
Oh, right. I just know people are going to hate it. And I know they're going to be, they can say what they want. They rip me every week, and I'm not bothered.
You hate it. I mean, everyone's going to...
Okay. You know what, as well? When we look at this, I can't even have the caveat or the excuse that I knew that Nuno Santos had been sacked, because I made these transfers at 7:40 a.m. this morning for me, which is late night UK time. So I didn't even have the excuse of being like, oh, new manager bounce, I'm going to go for
So tell us what moves you've actually made.
All right. So it's a -4, and I've gone Antonio to Juan, because the difficult 5 fixtures coming up, and I wanted to buy back the Wolves guys, and I've gone for Rafinha to Son.
Okay.
And then I've gone from Diaz to Chalobah.
That's the one. That's the one that I go.
What
were you thinking?
That's the humdinger, right? So here's my double thinking. So first, I said my baby's almost on the way, and I didn't want to get caught up in all of that. I don't want to miss deadline, so I wanted to make a team that was ready to go. And then I did it, and I pressed confirm transfer, and I thought, what am I doing? Because my original plan, which you said, oh, that's a great idea. My original plan was just simply going to be Kane to Jimenez and Gallagher or Rafinha to Son.
Okay, I guess it's a bit sideways, isn't it? The Kane to Son, but I get it.
But that would have meant that I would have gone, a Gallagher or a Rafinha to a Son and got Jimenez in, which is a great option. I could have just done it that way.
Oh my God.
So
talk about eggs in baskets, mate, with Tottenham. I mean, there's plenty of people out there that don't even own a Spurs asset, and you've got the two main ones preempted their good fixture run. I mean, it could be genius or it could be mental.
This is what I was thinking. I could come back. Let's say I'm back in like a month or something, and I could be sat here, being all like, what a move that was. Or I could be sat here going, oh my God, what a move that was. Like, it's going to be one of the two. And I always say, like, the advice or suggestions or discussions I have are completely separate to what I do to my own team.
Yeah.
I'll make my own plans and I'll play my own way and I'll be reckless, or I'll come up with these these schemes and plans because I'll go for it. I don't want to be a guy that just tries to shoot for 100k or 200k. I want to be the guy that tries to shoot all the way for number one, right? And if I don't, I play the game and I lose, and I play and I have fun doing it.
That's completely fair enough. At least you're going to be playing Gallagher or Livramento more often than not when Chalobah gets benched.
So here's why Chalobah. First, money. Obviously, I can't afford James or Chilwell. That's something for the future. Now, I was going to go Kane, Jimenez, and Gallagher to Son, and then Rafinha would have been my first bench, which would be great because I'd have a Diaz, Cancelo, Christensen, Trent as my back four. Probably someone gets rotated out. Here's my thinking why behind Chalobah. He's with Christensen. I've got a good bench with Gallagher and Livramento. I don't see them being both of them benched. If both of them are not playing, I feel like I'm pretty unlucky. So if one of them's benched, I've got Gallagher or Livramento coming on. I think the rest of my team, bar Mount, should be solid. But if Mount's fit, he should be solid. Cancelo has been playing as well. But when I was looking back at the games that teams that they've missed, Chalobah's missed all the difficult games that Chelsea have had. And I know he didn't play against Newcastle, but we talked about this before the stream, right? That he didn't play against Newcastle because he just played in the Cup and Norwich. So he just played 2 games, so he took a rest. But in the easier games on paper, Chalobah's played. And in the more difficult ones, he's not.
We've got a super chat, Rob. Anthony Gary says, I support Rob's crazy moves. More power to him. Look forward to seeing him more in the future. Sad to see him taking a break, but understood, of course. That's a nice message. Thanks, Anthony.
Love that. That's a positive comment. This is crazy.
Yay!
What is happening? But yeah, just going back to the Chelsea defenders. If both of them play, I reckon that could be a 6-pointer. And Chalobah's one of the top scoring Chelsea defenders. And I just think one of the two will play, which means Gallagher or Livramento come on. If one of those boys comes on as a sub, I feel pretty unlucky because they're centre halves, right? Or one in a back three. Yeah. If both of them play, it's a good time. But if it's a difficult game, say against Man City or against Liverpool, I'll bench them.
That's completely fair.
Or bench one of them. So that was my thinking about why I wanted another Chelsea defender. I wanted to take the punt on having 2 Chelsea lads. So if they play against Burnley, happy days. I've got 2 Chelsea defenders. If they don't, they don't. Both of them miss out. Livramento comes in. Livramento's a fantastic option.
It seems like they've been rotating that centre back, or Tuchel's been rotating those 3 centre backs fairly often. I mean, Chalobah's been playing fairly often, but Thiago Silva can't play every game. As Piliqueta, could get a right wing back role occasionally here and there at the expense of James. And it does create room for Chalobah to play. Obviously, he won't play every single game.
No,
he'll play maybe even worse than 66.67% of the time.
2 in 5.
2 in 5. Yeah,
4.9 million. I'll take it. Christensen's 5. I'll penny pinch. I don't have to explain Son because it's Son. I was always getting Son. He's one of my favorites. Every time I watch Spurs, even against like United, there was a chance it would be him. Every time, anything, he takes corners. Everything about him, for his price is fair. I think everything about Son is fantastic. I'll always back Son.
I mean, you've got to be happy with the new manager bounce potential as well. I mean,
that was boys. I had a feeling Nuno was going to be done after that abysmal performance, and it's been poor. So the Spurs double up, I know it's madness. I know, but we're coming into a good run of fixtures. Should be getting a new manager in now. Hopefully Kane wakes up because I just believe in Harry Kane. Sometimes for me with football, sometimes it's not about stats or even before a match is kicked. Sometimes you just believe a player has that ability. And I believe in Harry Kane. I believe he's a top player when he sorts whatever he's got going on. When he sorts it out, it's fine. But like I said, these are also placeholders. So Kane could go to Ronaldo in a couple of weeks. And I had Kane anyway. So I just thought, let's just have a go. Let's attack. Kane's like 6.2 4% owned. Son's 17% owned. So if they do well, it's a lovely green arrow. And if they don't, they don't. Egg on my face, and I'll just own up to the mistake that I've made.
Fair play. I mean, I quite like the moves now you talked it through. The only one is Chalobah. That sort of makes me uneasy, but I don't think there's anything bad going for it and bringing in Son. He could easily haul over the next 5. Yeah, exactly.
Gallagher and Livramento, like he doesn't play. He doesn't play. Livramento, Gallagher comes in, and I'm a happy chappy. It's not the worst. And look, because I had Kane anyway. I didn't bring Kane in as well. I had him for the last 2 game weeks because of Lukaku. So let's say in 2 or 3 game weeks when the manager settles and it's just not working, Kane is just not sorting himself out, I can go to Ronaldo, or I can use that money and spread it around. I'm not stuck in this forever. People see a move like this and think, oh, you're trapped. But, if I don't do a move next week, I've got 2 free transfers, Kane to someone, and then I've got like 4 million to spend anywhere I want.
Yeah,
I could do Kane all the way down, go 4-4-2, and do Mount to a higher up player as well. So
lots of flexibility still to come
because my money's spread. Midfield and
Salah
forward.
captain nailed on for you.
Yes.
I think that's fairly reasonable. We'll talk about captaincy in more in depth when we look at my team. Let's move over actually and look at that. I've got Ramsdale back in goal. You'll be happy to hear. Foster's dead to me now. So, well, looking forward to those more 10-point hauls from Ramsdale. Playing Watford at home, it could happen. Never know. Reece James has Burnley at home, which is good. I mean, if you're looking outside of Salah captaincy this week, Chelsea's probably the fixture to look at it. But there aren't really that many intuitive attacking Chelsea options. So looking at the likes of Reece James or Chilwell as a differential captain shout could reap rewards, I guess. The other option is Mbeumo or Tony against Norwich at home. Obviously, Operation Target Norwich. But, I mean, there's a risk that Brentford turn up as they did at the weekend with a bit of a lacklustre performance. They'll probably win against Norwich, but it might not be convincing, and Tony might not even get on the score sheet. I think probably the safest one for anyone who doesn't really want to overthink it is just to captain Salah. I think most people are going to do that. He was 199% effective ownership this week. I mean, if he hauls, you're absolutely stuck. So don't overthink it. That's what I'm going to do. I'm probably just going to captain Salah and not overthink it.
You literally, like the first 3 that you said, list. So Salah's my number 1, James or Chilwell's my number 2, and Tony or Mbeumo is my number 3. Literally the same. But also, I would have said like target Newcastle. But Brighton have got no one that you'd have or captain in an attacking sense.
Well, exactly. So it's
and then
bit redundant.
But an outside one. Let's just pretend Salah doesn't exist in the captaincy world right now, because we're all going to captain him. It's the safest bet. If you were looking for something, we talked about him earlier, Jamie Vardy. I know he's back-to-back 1-pointers, but he's a Sheffield lad going to Leeds in front of the fans, who Leeds are conceding goals. They're not looking great. They're just outside the relegation zone. They're not looking a fantastic side. No, Leicester's not, but Jamie Vardy scores goals. You just know Jamie Vardy, a Sheffield lad in front of Leeds, scoring a goal, standing in front of them, hands on his ears or hands on his mouth, like shushing the crowd. You can
see it. You can see it now. It's a decent differential shout for sure. Aubameyang at Watford might not be a bad shout as well. Because
again, targeting Watford, but Watford aren't with Ranieri. I don't think they're going to be whipping boys as much as Norwich, Newcastle.
I think they're going to be hit and miss here and there. I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I think your boys Son and Kane might not be a bad shout against Everton. If Everton can concede 5 to Watford, then they can concede a few goals to Spurs. But it's an interesting one this week. Obviously, Man United play Man City, so that takes away a couple of the inform attacking sides to target for captaincy. But I think the moral of the story is just to not overthink it and captain Salah. But let's talk about my moves. I haven't made any yet, but it will either be a straight swap De Bruyne to Mane, 11.9 to 11.9, which is sort of easy. I quite enjoy having a bit of extra skin in the game watching Liverpool. But I think probably the move that will happen is either De Bruyne to Son or Foden or whoever, and then I'll be able to upgrade another player and have Son and Foden instead of De Bruyne and Mount, or De Bruyne and Rafinha, depending on who I choose to take out. The Rafinha issue with the Brazilian international break sort of puts me off a little bit. So I could do De Bruyne and Rafinha to Son and Foden. I think that would be a fairly reasonable set of transfers. So we will see. I'm probably going to end up keeping Antonio, which is against my intuition, but I think something says to me he's got a really decent set of stats still. So maybe just go with it. If I have to bench him for Livramento, if I choose to do that, then that's probably fine. But I mean, there's a common consensus that you probably should just play the attacking player. He could easily get a goal against Liverpool, who have been, well, they conceded 2 at the weekend to Brighton, for goodness sake. So Antonio could get some form back and score then. But we will see. I'm pretty happy with my team in general. I keep Mount for another couple of weeks. Cancelo's been a bit of a pain, but I'm just going to keep and see what happens. You know, it's City at the back. They should be keeping clean sheets. Not much more to say, really.
Do you have any money in the bank?
No, 0.0. Yeah, which is a shame. But I think De Bruyne and Rafinha, that's just enough for Son and Foden. So fingers crossed. If I removed Mount instead of Rafinha, I could possibly go up to Rashford if I wanted to. But I mean, that's probably a bit further down the line.
But so you could do De Bruyne and Rafinha to Son and Foden.
Yes. Yeah.
You can afford that move.
Well, I mean, let me just double check. You're making me doubt myself now, but yes, I'm pretty sure I can. I think it was within 0.1 million. So Son's in, and where's Foden? Foden. Yeah, 0.0. So exact money to do that.
But how many transfers have you got? One.
Just one. So it'd be for a hit.
Be for a hit.
Yeah. Oh, it's tempting.
I don't want to sway you, Ted, but the last time you were reluctant with a hit, you didn't bring Reece James in a week early.
But I don't think he did anything that week.
He did. He got 13.
Oh God. That's true. Oh my God, you absolutely spot on.
You didn't take Semedo out, and you didn't take the extra 4 for James.
But that wasn't a bad thing, because Livramento did play for 9 points, so it would have been exactly the same outcome. But yeah, good point. But that's not how we should live our FPL lives, you know.
No. But also the long distance, effectively you can do De Bruyne to Son, that's fine. But then you just got to weigh up Rafinha versus Foden for the next.
Yeah, it's a tricky one.
Is Foden long term for you? Then maybe it could be a good move.
I think Rafinha is an excellent player, and I don't think it would be a bad move to keep him. But the international break stuff, the fact that Leeds aren't playing with a completely fully fit starting 11, the likes of Bamford and Ayling missing. I know Roberts is back now. Phillips. Oh, I forget all their names. Regardless, it's not like the ideal starting side for Leeds, and they just played Norwich, and obviously Rafinha got a goal, and I think that's probably to be expected. But Leicester and Spurs might be a little bit more of a tough ask. He might even miss Spurs, so I would be tempted to do that move, to be honest. But I would have to keep Mason Mount, and he's such a high maintenance own. I'm not sure if I can go on and long term keep Mason Mount. I don't know. We'll see. But I think that's a really tempting move. I'm going to have to watch the price changes now, aren't I? Because that's 0.0. If Son goes up again, or
and that's it. Like, obviously, you guys have got all day in the UK to be. There might be some early transfers for likes of Son. You don't want to miss out. Or De Bruyne could go down, and Foden obviously is extremely popular. Like it's unlucky. It's one of them where you pull the trigger or you don't, because even if you wait till like Thursday, Friday, that might be it, because you're 0.0, which is just the most uncomfortable position to be, because Sod's law is you'll make the move and then like Foden goes off hobbling in Champions League, but I think you should be all right with De Bruyne to Son at least, and then you could always decide Rafinha later.
I mean, yeah, Foden against Man United might not be
you could wait international break for that. Like, I don't think Son will be in Europe this week, so You'd be unlucky if he's out with a training injury.
What do you think? Which moves do you prefer? The De Bruyne to Mane or De Bruyne to Son, Rafinha to Foden? That double move. I'm not sure I would do it for a hit.
When we look, like I said, when you asked me earlier for like a free reign choose a player, I said Mane. But the thing is, Mane is going to be a transfer out for you, I think. Like, if you got Son in now, we've just been talking about that run of fixtures for Spurs. So you can double down on that incredible Liverpool attack, or you can get in on Spurs on the ground floor when they're about to go on like a 6-game run of top fixtures.
I mean, the good thing about Son is that even during this lackadaisical approach from Nuno, or the fact that they've had a couple of dodgy performances, he's been fairly consistent with his returns all the way throughout the season. And he's always there for the through ball. He's always there to be clinically finishing the ball off. So, I mean, he could really go on a great run going forwards with some easy fixture and a new manager bounce. So the fact that he's been almost immune to all of the external pressures and influences is just really encouraging. So
I think, Son's my number one, and you get back what 1.7 million, something like that, if you go De Bruyne to Son, and that 1.7 million can be, like you said, Rafinha to Son, if that Rafinha to Foden, if that's still possible, or you could go Antonio up to someone, or Jimenez up to someone, or Tony up to someone, or White up to someone and go 4-4-2. But you know what I mean. Like the not only is Son a fantastic player and he's great no matter what, and even though Mane is in such a fantastic attacking Liverpool side, that extra 1.7 million is something that you could put somewhere else in that 11 to
100%,
to improve.
So exactly.
I would definitely back the De Bruyne to Son move if I had to. I love the idea of the Mane Salah double up. I just think it sounds so like deadly. It sounds like, oh, if you're watching Liverpool game, you the stats are there and they've been scoring so many goals. Like, you want them to win every game 5-0, because if they win 5-0 and Salah and Mane aren't involved, then that's crazy.
I think it just blocks me from bringing in a Spurs player. I could go Mane to Son, but then I'm doing a lot of transfers, sort of doing the hokey cokey.
You're
with
bringing Mane now, and then in a couple of weeks that's a transfer. That's what I said earlier, right? About it's a transfer out, so you can get in now with Son as they're about to hit the new fixtures.
Yeah, I mean, not to mention the possibility of even going for a Man United player further down the line in 4 or 5 game weeks. Lots of things to think about, and remember, we have to play the medium-term to long-term game here, so have to think carefully about it. I'm very tempted by Mane, but probably the sensible move is Son, because as you say, that 1.7 is very useful to accommodate the variable change in FPL. But we'll leave it there. We've been talking for an hour and 50, so I mean that was it's quite a long stream. But we'll leave it there. Best of luck in everything baby related, and we'll miss you for the next 3 or 4 weeks. International break considered.
I'll come back and we'll see how this Spurs double up
comes along. Be praising your genius or heckling your idiocy.
Well, I can already imagine it's either going to be it was terrible or you got lucky, judging on the comments.
Well, we love it. Love the creative approach. But fingers crossed that your late nights with the baby will make you even more of a better FPL manager. We talked about Seb on the Scoutcast, because he's had a baby as well, and he was saying I make all of my FPL decisions at 3 a.m. in the morning, feeding and whatever. So apparently, and he's been doing incredibly well. So maybe that's the secret. Right, we'll leave it there. Thanks everyone for joining me in the chat, and good luck for the rest of Game Week 10. If you have any players playing tonight, come on Jimenez, hat-trick will do. And if we don't speak, best of luck for Game Week 11 as well.
Yeah,
see